Should you work remotely from Buenos Aires, Argentina? Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to give you all my thoughts on working remotely from Buenos Aires. So if you have been considering after the pandemic moving down to Buenos Aires, then definitely stick around till the end of this video. So before we get into the video, I'm going to let you know a little bit about me. I am a 7-year expat and I spent the last 3 years of my life living in Buenos Aires. We lived in the Recoleta neighborhood and then the Puerto Madero neighborhood. So not only have I lived in Buenos Aires, but I lived in 2 different neighborhoods. And now I'm repatriated back in Texas, where I create videos and blog posts for you guys so you can live your best life. And if that's in Argentina, then that's awesome. So Buenos Aires is a great place to live. There is no doubt about that. But should you work remotely? Well, my answer is yes. I'm not even gonna make you wait till the end of the video to give you my answer. It is a 100% yes. I think it's a great place to work remotely. And today I'm going to give you some reasons why. But before we get started, I want to give a little tax, disclaimer. I am by no means any stretch of the imagination a tax expert. So if you're planning on working from an employer from a different country, but working from Argentina, there could be some kind of tax implications there. So definitely check that out with your local tax specialist. I am just going to tell you overall what I think it's like working remotely in Buenos Aires. So the first reason I think it's a good idea to work remotely from Buenos Aires is the time zones. And the time zones are not that far off from what we have in the US. So if you're an American worker, right now I'm in Texas, I'm in the central time zone, and Buenos Aires, depending on the time of the year, would either be 2 hours ahead or 3 hours ahead. It would depend on if we were in daylight savings or not, because Argentina does not do daylight savings, so it's just the same there all the time, but the US would go back and forth. So depending on the time of year, again, it was either 2 or 3 hours ahead. So you can imagine if you're on the East Coast in the US, that would be either 1 or 2 hours. So again, the working hours, opening hours are really similar, basically can't get much closer to that. So I think that's one reason that it's a good idea to work remotely. Another reason is there's lots of digital nomads in Buenos Aires. There are many hostels that you can stay at. There's a good community of people that are, I would say, kind of passing through Buenos Aires, but when I say passing through, I mean for a few months. So they might be living there for a month to 6 months to a year, and that community is fairly large. So you are going to be able to find people that are doing the same thing as you and can kind of relate to them, and you can make friends that way. So I think the digital nomad community that is in Buenos Aires is another really good reason that you should consider working remotely from there. And finally, I think this one's really important, probably the most important for working remotely. And it's even more important after I lived in a place like Luanda, Angola, and that's going to be your internet availability and strength. And in Buenos Aires, there is Wi-Fi everywhere. The Wi-Fi available in your apartments, or so if you're renting, or if you're going to be in an Airbnb or a hostel type situation, I always found it to be very strong, and I never had really any problems with it. I think during the pandemic, it might have gone down a few times, but overall, I felt like the internet was really strong in Buenos Aires. Again, it'll probably depend on where you're actually staying, but I think overall, it's a great place to work remotely. Now, before you move there, I've got a few tips for you. And the first one is going to be learn some Spanish. I know learning a foreign language is so freaking hard. I tried to learn some Portuguese when we were in Luanda, and I tried to learn some Spanish when we were in Buenos Aires, but I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to at least try to learn some words and at least try to get to that basic level or intermediate level of Spanish, because in Buenos Aires, you're actually not going to find a lot of English. It's very hard to find many people at all that will speak English or that do speak English. So having those Spanish skills are going to be really important to having a better remote working experience. My second tip before you move down to Buenos Aires to work remotely is to move there first. So what I mean by that is don't rent an apartment for a year online. I really suggest you go there first and actually walk around the neighborhood, Have some apartments that you want to look at and go look at those apartments, see exactly where they're situated, see what's below, whether it's a nightclub or a bar or a restaurant. If you are wanting peace and quiet, then you'll definitely want to be aware of what's around you. The city noise can be really loud sometimes, so I definitely suggest going there and actually taking a look at the apartments and the neighborhoods before you actually sign any kind of a rental agreement online. And my last third tip kind of goes along with the other one, and that's going to be that when you are looking at those apartments, be sure to check the Wi-Fi signal if you can. Obviously, if you're working remotely, you're going to be on your computer probably all day. You're going to be using the internet connection. And so if you are able to just kind of double check that with your cell phone and your laptop when you get there, whether it's choosing a hostel or choosing an apartment, that's probably a good idea. You just want to make sure that it's a good company that you have access or internet access with, and you want to make sure the strength will work for whatever your working needs are. All right, so if you've been considering working remotely from Buenos Aires after the pandemic, then I definitely recommend doing that. I think there's so many great reasons. There's so much culture, there's so many things to eat and do and see when you're not working that it's a great place for a digital nomad to live and work from, and I highly recommend it. And speaking of things to do, I have created a checklist, an activity checklist with over 50 activities that you can do when you are in Buenos Aires to really make the experience even better. And you can download that. I put the link down below in the description box, so definitely be sure to check it out. And be sure to hit that red subscribe button, guys. That way you can get more content from me on living in Buenos Aires, living in Angola, and just expat life in general. All right, guys, I'll see you next week. Bye.